So first and foremost, I just want to say it's great that we really get to have this conversation today because I really think this is an important topic that as Black men we rarely talk about. Um, and before we get started, though, I do want us to just get engaged in regards to name, where you're from, and I'm just curious to know what are you most proud of. So, your name, where you're from, and what are you most proud of? Elliot or Ben?
Well, I'll go ahead and go first. So, my name is Elliot Bailey. I am originally from St. Louis, well, East St. Louis, Belleville area, but I moved out to California when I was about 9 years old. So, when I stay where I'm from, I really say California because I've lived most of my life out here. And then what I'm most proud of, I would have to really say my family. I come from a broken home. I was adopted, and I really didn't have a great family basis or foundation in what I'm building with my wife and my kids. I think as the future, as you know, as the future. As I, prepare my kids for their futures and, start to create this foundation for my family, I think that's what I'm most proud of because they're an everyday living testament for me, like how hard we work and, when they're able to achieve things and do things in life, it makes, it makes some of the sacrifices and some of the things that you go through well worth it.
Thank you for sharing. What about you, Ben?
Hey y'all, my name is Benjamin. I am Benjamin Genty, born and raised in Montclair, New Jersey, which is like northern New Jersey, about 35 minutes away from New York City. And I think I'm most proud of myself for still being here. Um, when I think about like all that life has thrown at me and all that I've survived, I'm most proud of myself for navigating life's challenges with grace and with resilience. Um, yeah, that's it.
Great. So I don't hear that New Jersey or New York accent though.
Yeah. So my parents are Haitian. They are so I'm a first generation Haitian American.
Yeah.
So you might not hear any accent, you might hear a slightly
Yeah.
Caribbean accent, but that's what you hear.
Yeah. Mostly when I meet people from New Jersey, I know.
Yeah.
They're
They
like
got
Jersey,
yeah.
Jersey.
Right.
So, well, just really quickly, I mean, Greg Hutchings, I'm actually from Alexandria, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I would say I'm most proud of our kids. My wife and I, we have two children, and I'm beginning now because they're getting older and we're soon gonna have an empty nest. I'm realizing that, we did a good job. I mean, we're still raising our kids, but I feel like we gave them a really solid foundation. So I'm very proud of that. And I never knew I would be that person saying that. But the older I get, the more emotional and like deep I get about family. So it's pretty cool, especially similar to you, Elliot. I grew up in a single parent household as well. So I'm kind of like learning. I had to learn all this and build the plane in the air. I didn't have a role model or an example. So I want to just take us through really quickly the three objectives that I really wanted to tackle today during this time. One is I want to talk about Black fatigue because as as Black men in America, we experience a lot of, or we encounter racism, types of racism, um, and it can become fatiguing, over time, especially when you are in the space where you're trying to advocate equity or to be anti-racist, which takes energy and time, but then you're also a victim of racism, it just makes it even more fatiguing. So I want to kind of talk through that and how do we, take some of these experiences that we have and make sure that we're promoting self-care so that we don't become a statistic. And I'm going to share some, some statistics with you all today that may be eye-opening. You may already have seen them before, but I think every time I see them, it's just, mind-boggling, and it makes me want to make sure I'm paying attention to doing what I need to do to maintain my mental health. And then the third objective is just to have an open mic, meaning safe space for us to really have a conversation. I wanted this to be more of, a fireside chat. I want to give some information, but I want to have more discussion so we're able to kind of talk through and unpack, just some of our experiences. So any questions about that before we move on? We're going. So I don't know if you all have heard of the book Black Fatigue. It's a book by Mary Frances Winters, and she is an author. She was in the DMV, but now she's in North Carolina. She relocated a few years ago. But I read this book during the pandemic when I was the school superintendent. The superintendent of schools in Alexandria. And it was a time where there was a lot of stress in regards to COVID. And then we also had the murder of George Floyd, which brought a lot of racial tension for us in Alexandria, really across the country. And I needed to find, like, why was I feeling so exhausted? And why was I having kind of this chronic stress? And when I read this book, it really gave me language to use for when you're experiencing trauma or just being in America. So a part of her definition of Black fatigue, it deals with physical, emotional, and psychological health, and how systemic racism can actually have an impact on that negatively. Having to deal with microaggressions, having to deal with racist situations, having just to deal with being in America, that it really can take a toll on you, whether it's physically, emotionally, or psychologically. And there is some historical context to this because we have had generations of oppression and racism in our community, and it is a thing. We don't realize this, but there is a thing about transferring trauma from generation to generation, right? So, we come from, and I know, Ben, you said that you are first generation Haitian American. And, your family, I'm sure, has its own kind of trauma that they've experienced generations. The same as, my family, who, is originally, I'm sure, from Africa, not sure where in Africa, but, was brought here and was in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio. But this generational kind of like, it's not, I don't want to call it a generational curse. A lot of people call it that, but I like to call it generational trauma that is kind of like set down throughout each generation. It really does have an impact on us today, whether we believe it or not. And then we also have trauma from our workplace, right? Many of you, I'm sure you are in a space, you might be in a space that's all Black, and most Black folks are not. So you're in the workplace, you might be in a situation where you're having to deal with whether it's productivity or job satisfaction, and there's just some type of negative energy, or sometimes folks will try to say that you have gotten this job because of affirmative action, or you were DEI hire. All these things are happening right now, but these are all stressors that are really brought to us as Black men in the workplace. And what Mary Frances Winters talks about is just how do we cope and how do we become resilient, throughout our lives, having to experience this over and over again. And it was very interesting because she talks about her husband who unfortunately has passed away, but she felt that the stress that he dealt with as a Black man in America, it actually contributed to his untimely death. And there's research, if you go out there, and I'm going to share some with you today, where Black folks, anytime we look at mental health, or we look at high blood pressure, or we look at heart attack, or we look at cancer, especially prostate cancer for Black men, we are impacted most significant in comparison to any of our counterparts. And I believe a lot of that stems from the amount of trauma and the Black fatigue that we experience throughout our lifetime. It literally has an impact. So we are going to have to do everything within our power to have some form of self-care. And then, one great thing about this book is that she also provides just some narratives of real life stories and things. So I want to kind of have a discussion. I want to give you some context to Black fatigue because I wanted to, have an open mic in regards to like how does Black fatigue manifest in your personal or professional life? I'm just curious to kind of hear, do you believe that Mary Frances Winters was off base with some of the things that came out of her book, Black Fatigue? But have you experienced it? It's open mic for anybody.
I could definitely attest to feelings, fitness or fatigue, I should say. Um, Definitely while I was in the military, that was something that I think played a major role in my decision to exit out of the military. Um, I was in the military for 9 years, and when I was looking back at my DDT 14, I seen that I was deployed for 7.5 of those years. And so, although I was young at the time when I joined the military, I was only 20. As I got older, I realized I was like, deployments aren't as fun anymore due to how taxing that it was. And it became on myself mentally, physically, and emotionally. And then once I started to include that family dynamic in my life, it was just a completely switch for me because then the fatigue came from wanting to know that I had a purpose, which was fulfilling my job and being in the military, but my mind was completely somewhere else, which was with my family and with what was going on with them. So for 9 to 10 months, I'm having to battle not fully being able to be there for my family in a way that I know I need to be, but also, having to make sure that I was 100%, or, they were requiring me to be 100% present in my military aspect. So once I got off of deployment, you really had to jump back into just kind of being being the person that had in charge. But, a lot of the times I found myself was like, goodness, I'm just tired. I just want to sit and relax and, kind of take a reset. But a lot of that time you don't get that grace to be able to do so in the military. And you're either, you get your leave for a week or 2 weeks, and then it's back to the grind. It's back to, filling that mission. And, then you start to realize that life in back home is now starting to take a back burner to, your presence and things like that, because you're still not, you're back, and you're back in your home, but you're still not back in home because, again, your time and your effort is getting pushed towards a career and a mission that you have to fulfill.
And what about you, Ben? Do you have anything you want to add to that? And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll say I'm definitely experiencing a lot of Black fatigue now in my day-to-day at work. Um, the past 15 years I've spent primarily working in education and social services where predominantly like the people that I've interacted with and worked with were Black and brown. But I pivoted about 2 years ago into tech sales, so working with working in a predominantly white male dominated industry. Um, and I find myself constantly defending what it means to be black or over explaining myself. Um, or, when the work of either a black and brown colleague or even our direct report is called into question, like going above and beyond to ensure that um that person's voice is not silenced or it's taken into consideration. Um, so I guess like overextending myself at work is where I feel the most fatigue.
A lot of us experience that at work, right? Um, and then eventually that will start trickling into our home life because, sometimes we want to, I mean, think about it. It's kind of like if you feel you can't express yourself or somebody always has something to say or they always want to challenge everything that you do, you become kind of like angry. And I think
Yeah,
that's where that whole angry black man kind of syndrome comes from, right?
for
And
sure.
I think that we have to stop running from that. We have to acknowledge that it's okay for us to be angry. Now we got to work on how we address that, right? But it is okay to be angry. Like we should not brush things off if we're being treated disrespectfully. You know. I
Yeah,
see Rob. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
yeah. I was just gonna add like all that is true, and I work for a pretty progressive organization. I would say that puts people first and takes um all of that into consideration, and yet there are still pockets and silos um where it exists. And so, yeah, it's just finding community like these to kind of offset that has been so helpful.
This right here is a part of self-care, having a network where you can kind of release some of that so you're not keeping it all in. Or if you have a therapist, which I strongly recommend as black men, we don't get therapists, right? And it's because we've been raised a certain way. I'm not gonna say all black men, but many black people, um, we feel the church is where we go to, get our help, right? We gotta pray, we have to have somebody lay hands on us, right? We have things like that's supposed to help us get through, but sometimes we really do need a, a profession, you know. And therapy, I think, is one of the best things I know for me. My therapist, who's out of Richmond, Virginia, his name is Mitch Reed, and he's great. I've been with him for 3 years now, and it's really helped me to unpack some of just the life experiences as well as childhood trauma that is still impacting my adulthood now, right? That a lot of us have that we've been trained to kind of push down. And what I've learned through therapy is that nothing ever is like pushed down, it's always there. And it just takes something to trigger it. And I would rather for me to trigger it myself than for something out there to trigger, because then you can have situations where you could lose your mind. That's real, and it happens, right? Just from a trigger. So I want to try to unpack some of that so I can release it. But I saw Rob trying to get in. I
Yeah, first of
think
all,
you're in
thank
Richmond.
you. Yeah, I'm in Richmond. So when you mentioned Richmond, I thought that was right on time for me to at least show my face. But appreciate you leading this discussion. I want to touch on what you just said about therapy. I'm telling you, therapy is a secret weapon that doesn't need to be a secret anymore. It's really no different than going to get a haircut. If you go to the barbershop, you go to the barbershop, get your line edged up. Some people say, well, I can line my own edge up. Well, that's cool, but you should probably still go to the therapist to kind of release those things or get in those areas that you just cannot do that. I've done that. I don't know if Anyway, I won't go too deep in that, but for me, black fatigue comes from dealing with folks on social media, and I am a recovering people pleaser. And so being a recovering people pleaser sometimes, or when I was a people pleaser, I was so focused on not saying anything that would hurt other people's feelings. I would keep things to myself, but I've become a recovering people pleaser, meaning I'm very direct. So I have no problem with telling people how I feel directly. You know, I had a situation where, you know, a certain situation took place 2 weekends ago. You know, a certain event, and you know, a certain speaker got well, let's just say it, man. You know, anyway, he got shot at, right? And so, you know, I posted one word on my Facebook, and I'm not gonna tell you what it was, but I posted one word on my Facebook, and I had a white male who's a parent of a student that goes to my girl's school. He's gonna come on and tell me to take it down. He's gonna tell me take it down. Then, you know, talk about this is disgraceful. And I just was direct with my man. I said, first of all, who are you to tell me to take anything down on my platform? And so he responded and said something about you know, me lacking class, and that he thought so or whatever. You know, he had always thought that I lacked class. And I just was like, cool, no problem. And I just told him, I said, listen, before you tell me to delete anything from my profile, delete me. And he did. And I did. And then he follows up a couple of days later and he texts me. But when he texts me, he didn't text me to apologize to me. He texted me to say that his actions weren't godlike. Right? It wasn't, hey, Rob, you know, I apologize for, you know, coming at you that way, or, you know, or you know, doing this, and I apologize if I came across. No, it was, I need to cleanse my spirit because what I was doing wasn't godlike. And so I told my wife this, and I ain't gonna lie to you. So I went to HBCU. I grew up in the Bronx. I literally, I'm a fan of Malcolm X. Like, that trigger, that'll come back quick. And and so for me, like, a lot of stuff that's going on is very triggering now. And I'm doing my best not to go back to my old militant ways of just arguing with people on social media. So that's why I'm like, listen, I'm gonna just stay on LinkedIn, where I know for a fact I won't be seeing a lot of that stuff, at least in my network. Some people might post that stuff on you know, on other people's networks, but Black fatigue is real. And I think for me, what I'm doing is getting entrenched in communities like this, where we could talk about it, where we can let it out. Exercise is important. And then really focusing on having pride in where we came from. Because I don't have a problem with defending who we are as a people, but just certain conversations I just won't entertain. And I'll be very, very direct and look people in their face and challenge them to explain their position if I have to go that route. So I appreciate this being a part of the conversation.
I was gonna say, I think we are on LinkedIn. You're an alpha man.
Oh yeah, we've been connected a long time.
That's right. I'm like, I
I'm
I
glad to know
remember
that.
you.
Yeah, I'm glad to know that you're a part of the community, man. Good to see you again, brother.
Yeah. And I just moved back to Richmond, so we need to connect.
Oh, for sure. Well,
Yeah.
listen, it's time to run up the numbers then, because some people are like, yo, what's up with the Richmond crew? I said, hey, we'll make it happen.
You gotta do it. I don't know if Bassie or Marlon that's on. Thanks for joining us. If you all wanted to kind of chime in, anything about like how does Black fatigue manifest in your personal or your professional life? Right? We can move it. So Rob, you actually touched on some of this. You talked about working out. You know, I had talked about the therapist piece too. It's going to be important for us because we're dealing with Black fatigue as Black men in America, right? It's going to be important for us to make sure that we practice self-care, right? And self-care comes in seeing a therapist. It comes in going to the gym, going to get a, you know, a massage, going to the spa, going running, you know, going on a family trip, watching a movie, just hanging out, you know, with your spouse, with your wife, whoever. Um, because right now, only 26.4% of Black and Hispanic men aged 18 to 44 who have experienced some form of anxiety or depression got mental health services. Only 26.4%, right? Said, I'm going to go get some mental health services because I'm having a problem, I'm experiencing depression. Whereas our non-Hispanic white men are at 45.1%. So almost 50% of them will go. A quarter of ours, our folks won't, right? And I think some of that is cultural. And some of it is kind of historical in regards to how we have been raised in our Black community, which we're trying to change that stigma, right? Because Black men, we're 20% more likely to experience a serious mental health problem. And it's because of all of the things that we encounter, throughout this time. The final fact that I wanted to bring up is that, and you might know this, you might not, but Black men have higher rates of high blood pressure and are 30% more likely to die from heart disease. And what I believe is beyond just not engaging in physical activity. I believe that if you are constantly having to deal with triggers and you're constantly revisiting trauma, that is going to cause mental anguish, which, causes an impact, I believe, on the heart, blood pressure, any type of illness that you have within your body, because trauma causes illness, truly does. And I think that's why it's higher, in our community. So I want us to think about, like, these are just some ideas that I'm providing, or some examples, like the exercise and the diet and that type of thing. What are some things that you all are doing to practice self-care? I mean, what are some of the things that you all do? How are you managing so that you're not walking around carrying this weight every day? Or do you just carry the weight? Because you might be doing that too.
I think for me,
I see. Oh, go ahead, brother. Go ahead, Ben.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think for me, what I've started doing a lot more as of this year is like regular exercise. Um, and also like on top of like daily exercise, like creating margin between during my day to like take a break from the computer, step away for a little bit, if it's for like 5 or 10 minutes to like grab a drink of water or go for a quick walk or let the dog out. Like time in the sun works wonders. I don't think we do enough as Black men to be active, but also like create little breaks between our day to just like offset the work.
Rob, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of half and half, man. I'm sometimes I hold it and then it comes out in the form of eating, and so I have to be mindful of what I did to come out of the valley experience that I was in not too long ago. And so, exercise is one, treating myself to the movies, making time for my family. I'm self-employed, and so, for me, if I'm not putting in that energy, putting in that work, I often feel like, you know, man, like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. But what I realize is that I am doing what I'm supposed to do by making time for my family now, and just making sure that I communicate with my family in advance. That if I have certain things that I need to do, these are the things that these are the times that I'm not going to be available. But being conscious of planning in advance, communicating, and then executing on the things that I need for myself. So getting in that gym is critical. Going for walks. I know right now it's crazy because it's raining like every 2 doggone minutes, but at the end of the day, not making excuses. And then also just having good conversations, reaching out to people in my inner circle, just to, I wouldn't call it vent, but just to talk, get things off my chest and move forward. Those are some of the ways that I focus on self-care. And sleep. Oh, I'm telling you, there's no discount on sleep. It's important that we get our rest, whether it's the 8 hours in the evening or being a mid 40s brother, catching a nap. Like right before this call, I was catching a nice little nap in my office. I said, "Hold up, I need to be on this call." So just being able to catch a nap from time to time so that I can be refreshed for the rest of the evening.
I wish I could take a nap. I can't. I just can't. Like, I physically can't take a nap. It's crazy. My wife, she's always like, "What?" I'm like, I would have to take like a pill or something to take a nap. Um, but I want a nap so bad. Like, I want to be able to just nap. Because my wife's napping all the time. We both are, self-employed. So we home. Um, but anybody else want to share how you kind of get your self-care in? Elliot or Bassett?
So for myself, how I get my self-care in, I definitely turn to prayer. That's something that I have incorporated into my daily routine, as well as for sure working out. I found out, I figured out working out is another way for me to kind of work through some things that might be on my mind, or it's just some of those I would say for myself, I always have ups and downs in my workout schedule. And I think when I'm going towards a different goal in my life, working out for me gives me that new headspace, that new sense of direction. And for me, it's kind of a foundation and focal point for me, just starting something new in my life and things like that. So I've always found when I've like transitioned to something different or something new, especially like I just take for example my last job. When I first started that job, I was really excited about the work and things like that. And when I found out like the work schedule didn't permit for me to work out as much as I would like to, I found that really weighed heavy on me moving forward, and even being happy within that position, because it just didn't allow for me to really focus on some personal goals that I might have. And so sometimes you have to sacrifice sleep for those, or even family time, because some people prefer to go in the evenings. And so I even see, even in the physical group, there's a guy who works out after his kids go to sleep. So you have to find a happy balance that works for your lifestyle, just to kind of be able to take advantage of that. But those are two ways that I find help myself.
So true. As you were talking, I'm wondering, because we kind of talked about that work-life balance, right, piece. And I love the fact that Rob, you were mentioning how being with your family is a part of your self-care too, making that time, because having that social connection it's important, with your children, with your wife. How can we break down that stigma, right? I mean, do you all hear the stigma too, like around that's just associated with Black men seeking, help for mental health issues? I mean, do you all hear that in your circle? I mean, do you ever talk to your boys about therapy? You know, I'm the one that's always bringing it up now, and they always say, "Oh,
Yeah, now
I do see it. Go ahead.
My circle is has evolved over the years. But the majority of the brothers in my network, that's a main staple. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, when I went through my mental health crisis back in 2015, I was on the verge of taking my own life. I had two brothers that came, you know, to the place that I was at, and they just let me release what was on my heart, and they was just like, yo, you need to get some help. And so I'm just grateful that I have men that are willing to tell me the truth and not coddle, and really make suggestions, and so it's very important that that be a regular part of the conversation, because like I said when I first came on, man, it's a secret weapon, because of the fact that you have someone that's not going to judge you. You're not going to have somebody that's going to talk you into thinking a certain way, which is actually what most people think. They think when they come in that the therapist is going to make them think a certain way. No, what they're really going to do is just ask you questions, and you will end up talking yourself into the solution, right? And so, but yeah, no, that's a thing. And I think in communities like this, it's not so much you telling people this is what you need to do. It's just asking them this one important quality question: Have you considered? Right? Have you considered? And most people have not really considered. They may have heard somebody talk about it, but they haven't really given it any consideration. And the moment they start to give it some consideration and start taking the necessary steps, that's when they'll see the growth that they need to, get into.
And
thanks
I
for
like to
sharing. I'm glad you
also,
got a good circle too."
yeah,
Go
for
ahead, Elliot.
sure. Same, I was gonna say the same thing, but I like to also add, I think that times are kind of changing as well, as generations shift. And so I think that, maybe your father's, that wasn't a focus because the dynamic was completely different. But as the younger generations like myself and your generation, we understand, one, that we need to be within the family household to be able to make a difference, but we also are getting that concept that we also, in order for us to be fully present and be, the father figure that our family needs us to be, we understand that mental aspect plays a huge role also. And I think with education, I think with like the groups like this, with like, circles, when when you understand the people around you in your circles, that's going to change, and so for my son, it's not going to be a foreign subject. It's going to be, I'm sitting him down and talking to him young, like, I even while just a couple of days ago, or I find my son, like, when he gets frustrated and upset, he'll go in his room and he'll play a song, and I listen to the song, and it's a real depressing song, and I'm like, Braylon, what's going on, And so I say, change it to something happy. Change it to something that's going to lift up your mood. I don't want you to go into, and he doesn't understand because he's only 5 or 6, but, that's us making sure and we're aware of these things and understanding, like, I don't want you to go down that road. I want you to find the happy alternative to dealing with your emotions. I want you to go to the, to come and be able to talk to me and say, oh, well, so I asked him, I said, what's going on? He's like, oh, I'm just mad because I didn't get my tablet. And, and so it's like, I'm like, I understand that you're sad, but that's not a reason to be sad and upset. And let's focus this energy towards something else. And so in those different and those smaller lessons is teaching him to, be aware of your feelings and understand that, acknowledge his feelings, but also understand that there's healthier ways to be able to express those ways. And it's not necessarily cutting yourself into a room and putting on a sad song that's going to keep you even more into that mood and in that space.
Yeah, very true. I don't know if Ben, you wanted to add anything about the stigma out there. Are you hearing that in your circle of friends in regards to like the stigma around seeking help for mental health issues?
Carrying firearms through a TSA screening checkpoint at the airport is prohibited by federal law and regulations. Please check all carry-on baggage for firearms before entering the screening checkpoint.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna I know that we have like 4 minutes remaining. And I just wanted to kind of open the floor for any comments or any final remarks that you all may want to share with the group as a whole.
Yeah, I'll just say that, for some people, it might not be easy to ask for help. And I just want to encourage you, if you're that person, one of the best ways to ask for help is probably not to be direct and ask for help, is to ask a question and get a conversation going, right? Because, if I don't know you and you don't know me, and I just approach you and say, hey, I need help, I may not be talking to the right person. But if I bring up a question or if I bring up a scenario to kind of gauge if that person is, I'm not going to say qualified, but if that person has some experience with what I'm dealing with, then it allows for me not to waste anybody's time. So I think what's important is that, yeah, we can seek help without feeling too vulnerable in the beginning. And this is for people that are not used to asking for help. Now, I'm in a phase right now where, like, for example, I know, Brother Hutchings, you and I, we've communicated through LinkedIn, and, we're still getting to know each other. But if I needed some help, I may reach out and say, hey, brother, you got a minute? I got to run something by you. Do you have a moment to talk? Right. So I think as you get to know people in this community or in other communities, start with a question to ask them, have you ever experienced this? Or have you ever experienced whatever it is that you're dealing with? Ask them that. Because if they haven't, then it saves you time from having to, explain what you're dealing with. If they haven't, then ask them, do you know someone who may have? And that way they can connect you, because it's freeing. It's something freeing about talking to someone who has gone through or experienced what you've been through. Because oftentimes if a person hasn't gone through it, it's difficult for them to relate. And so this is primarily for people who may struggle with asking for help, because they might feel like if I ask for help, either A, they might not be willing to help me, they probably can't help me. And so why waste my time? So to prevent yourself from wasting time, just ask the question, have you ever experienced this? Or do you know someone who has experienced this? And if they have, then ask them, are you open to, a quick conversation? I need to get some feedback. If asking for help is a struggle, ask for feedback. And by doing that, you put yourself in a position to get exactly what you ask for.
Thank you for that. So I know we are at 3:50. I got marching orders to stop at this time. But I want to thank you all, one, for just your transparency, right? And your candor. This is a topic a lot of people really don't talk about, unfortunately, they don't talk enough about, and don't have a network that they can come and have these conversations or probing questions, because that's really what we were doing. This is very similar to how a therapy session is, right? The only difference here is I'm not a therapist, I'm not licensed. But I will tell you that if you don't have one, try to find one. Just try it out. You got to find the right one. You can't just go to any therapist. You got to find the right one that you can connect with, same way when you want to find a doctor. But I truly believe it has a huge impact. So, Ellie, I want to thank you for the invitation to be able to speak to the group. Rob, I'm gonna send you my cell, so you have my info. Actually, I'll put it in a chat for you all, for everybody to have. And like I said, we are moving back to we're moving to Glen Allen. So I haven't been at, we moved from Richmond. I mean, our daughter was born in Mechanicsville in 2005. So we haven't been there since almost 20 years ago. But now we back home. I guess it's like home. I'm from Alexandria. My wife's from Virginia Beach, but it's midpoint. So we'll talk. Any final thoughts, Elliot, you want to share?
I love it. No, doctor, I appreciate you taking the time to, have this discussion with us. It's very important, mental health. And so, I'm glad that we were able to get you on the call and get some guys here to listen to what you have to say. And I hope, if even though people weren't able to talk, they were able to get the information. And like I was talking to you earlier, this is recorded, so we'll be able to get it out to the group as well. And, hopefully people are able to, like, Mr. YB was saying, that's his name. Miss Rob was saying, hopefully, they, might not automatically seek that attention, but they might ask the questions, and, that starts with, just, getting that conversation started. So I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Have a good one.
Peace out.
All right. Bye.